This conference will now be recorded.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. Do you guys want to get started, and then whoever comes in after can kind of just come in? What do you think?
Oh, sounds good.
Sounds good? All right.
Yep.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to our virtual program. Steph, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself a little, talk about what you do.
Yeah, so I am Steph Gaylor from Invincible Summer Farms and the Long Island Regional Tea Consortium. We do fresh production and seed production for restaurants, and we collaborate with various people. Well, first of all, let's introduce ourselves after I introduce myself. So we do a lot of this kind of seed production and breeding new varieties, and then we also work with collaborating with the Regional Tea Consortium with other people who are trying to grow seeds or learning how to grow seeds in seed libraries, of which Brentwood Public Library is a member of that consortium. So that's my brief introduction to what we do.
Great. And I mean, I'm Rose. I'm here working from the Brentwood Public Library. I'm a librarian there. And we're trying to offer some virtual seed programs for you guys. So that's what we're doing here today. All right. Yeah, so if anybody has questions, if anybody wants to go first, if you have something specific you're interested in asking Steph, or
Yes, please. So ask away. There's a lot of, usually it's a little slow to start off because, well, I'll just show you. I'm terrible at, I hate pictures, but this is our greenhouse that we just had to move. We put up in January 1. We took it down at the worst time of the year. We had to move everything and then assemble it again in the cold and freezing rain. But so anyway, I'm a professional semi, so I know what I'm doing. Ask me anything.
So, Tuti, do you want to go first? I can't hear you,
no, we
Tuti.
can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Oh, maybe we can put the chat on.
And her mic is on. It's not.
Yeah, your mic is on.
Tootie, you can also write in the chat if you can't get your mic on. There's a bubble to the upper right. Oh no. Can Tootie not hear us? You're right.
She can hear us and she can see us, but we can't hear her.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Is her green? Is that green microphone
Yeah,
button
Mm-hmm.
on?
One question I had was, it seems like people these days are being inspired by, those victory garden type things. And if somebody was trying to do that sort of planting, like they're in a survivalist mindset, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Okay, well, a few things on that particular model. Cooperative gardens was started about a month and a half ago by Nate Kleiman of Experimental Network, Farm Network, and there's a bunch of people, including myself, who are donating to that. It's kind of an interesting model, but it's not a one-size-fits-all model. So I would, an idea of somebody, because they're historically different, something in World War II where we're not finding an enemy on our own soil like we are now, presents different problems. So I prefer to see it as no matter what you're doing and what you're growing, it has some kind of, it gives you some kind of agency, and connecting with the food system. It's not going to obviously save anybody at this point, in terms of like survivalists, because we can't feed ourselves if you're a farmer or not. So I think it's kind of an interesting question, but I think the purpose of, even if you're growing herbs, of learning something and that connection with the food system, like I said before, is really important in giving people agency, whether or not we're in a pandemic situation, is kind of critical to a sense of community and connectedness to what you eat. If that makes any sense. That was like a large one on sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. It's definitely exciting for me to wake up every morning and look at my seeds, Steph. Can I show you my
Sure.
my I mean, it's not much. It's not like Tootie's garden, or it's not impressive, but I'm showing you. Wait. Maybe I can do this. Oh, this isn't going to work. Anyway, there are three little pots of fennel that I got from our seed library, from you, Steph. And I was just wondering why two of them seem to be flourishing, and this one, I planted them all at the same time, but this one only has 2 seedlings.
Oh, Too's got fennels here.
Yeah, I mean, there may be a variety of reasons for that. It may be because it was sown unevenly. It may be because there was a little too much soil in one tray that, you know, they didn't pop up in a kind of uniform way. It's kind of like hit or miss, which is why when you're sowing something, seeds, it has to be done kind of in a uniform way for that reason. Because, I mean, even now, one of my biggest, since we moved, a lot of things have changed that I haven't really encountered before. So we had, as an example, I do things typically in these drill trays. They're called drill trays. They have like 10 channels, and I labeled them at the bottom. So I know, and they're, you know, we do about 100 drill trays a year, just of tomatoes. But the problem I had this year was this is really exact, and we do one variety, then we start another variety in that, in this layer, but we had rodents, so they were pushing all the seeds in these different channels, which created chaos. But I didn't really realize it. It kept happening. So then I started putting them in these, and I wanted to show you different ways of doing it in case one way doesn't work. You can always find another way. So I started putting them in these just regular pots and mass sowing them, dropping all the seeds in there and covering it with a little bit of soil. And you can see how much better they did in these.
Yeah.
Because first of all, even if they got in there, they can't scoop the seeds out of that little channel. And the second thing is they don't really like to work that hard like everybody else. So it's too much trouble to go into the pot a little bit deeper and pull the seeds out. So some of it's just trial and error and trying to figure out what went wrong with how you sowed the particular thing if you're used to sowing it properly. And so that's what I would assume would be the issue, is that probably the seeds were sown a little too deep or a little too much soil.
I thought I did each, it's just 3 little pots, but I thought I did each the same. So it's interesting to me. Apparently I didn't. But there's growth in each of them. And I love how when some of them, is that a seedling then? What's it called when it's really a baby?
Yeah, it's a seedling.
Seedling. I love how they grow, and sometimes the actual seed is still attached to the leaf, and then you feel like it's when the seed drops off, it's a rite of passage for your seedling.
Yeah, that's this. See how the tomato seed is still stuck to the tomato?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So that'll happen a lot, and it's kind of a cool thing.
It's very
that'll,
cold.
yeah, that'll occur. So well acquainted with that.
Yeah, my dad's peppers have that, and I never noticed it before, actually. That it had the little seed on the leaf.
It's so cool. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's
cool.
neat
And it,
to think
it's
about. Just the whole
and
process.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. I didn't know I would be this excited about growing seeds, but as Rosa is aware, I'm reporting on a regular basis. It's really fun.
Yeah. Tootie did say in the chat here, I have some seedlings that are dying. I'm not sure why.
Oh,
And I assume that's
Usually,
what she's holding up to the screen now.
Oh no.
oh.
Cucumber, it looks like it says. Yeah.
is it? I can't see the. I mean, it's probably something that I'm doing. I can't really see what it looks like. All I see is my particular left hand pointed. So, but is it does it look like it's dying from the soil line?
It's a little bit sprouted. It looks like a couple inches already. Not inches, maybe like an inch or so. And it looked like the leaves were kind of just hanging off of it, shriveled a little bit, would you say? That's what it looked
So
like.
sometimes what will happen is all of these I put under the most important thing about starting seedlings is starting it with a warm bottom heat. So, we've done that with heating pads, we've done it with heat mats, you could buy them commercially. Anything that has like you could put it on top of a refrigerator. The thing that'll kill seedlings the quickest is cold feet. So this has like a good root system, but underneath it, we have a heating pad, like a jury rig heating pad. So what'll happen a lot of times is you'll get something that dies at the soil line. It's called damping off. It'll die right about here. And that's because the soil is too cold and bacteria enter the stem where the soil meets, and it will just kind of like fall over. And that's where it.
Wow.
That's usually the most, but it's a little too early to start cucumbers as well. Usually it takes about a week for a cucumber to come up and about a week and a half to go from a tray to a transplant. So I would say start it in another, even to be on the safe side, I mean, we're getting a frost tonight. I would say start it in another 4 weeks, honestly, for a cucumber.
Okay. Oh, you know what she said? She just typed, it started well, but died after I transplanted it to a bigger pot.
Right. If you start it in a regular pot, there's really no need to transplant it. We start it in these 50 cell trays. There's 50 cell trays, 128. But we typically start it in a 50 cell, and then it comes right out of the 50 cell, and we use a transplanter to put it in. So usually there's no reason to pot up something like squash or cucumbers. Those are typically direct sown, and if you are going to transplant it, only do it once. Just go for something like a tomato. It's called potting up. You can go from a very small, something like a small drill tray like this, and this is like the size of my hand right here, to something like a 50 cell that looks like this. And I just want to get a finished tray or close to finished. So this is a finished tray that'll go right into the ground.
Wow.
So it goes from some little pot like this into something like this, where it has a root system, and it's just easy to put in there.
Mm-hmm.
You want to try to handle the transplant as little as possible.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm sorry. No, there's certain plants that do better putting them directly into the ground, or can you start like pretty much anything in like a container, I guess?
Because of what I do in particular, I start everything in a container,
Mm-hmm.
except for root crops like
Oh, okay.
for carrots. Those you really can't transplant. Some people do, but it's not advisable. A lot of things just get direct sown in a lot of different places, but that's because you have no pests. The good thing about transplanting is that if you have squirrels or deer, you already give it a head start if it's small, and then you put it into the ground. Like we'll do that with beans that we're trying to replicate for, seed regeneration that happens to be new. We'll do it for pretty much everything because we only get 10 seeds of it. So this is like a Moroccan cilantro that will start. This is something you could put directly into the ground, but because we have a problem with, like I said, rodents or deer, could be anything. I want to make sure that I don't direct sow it and that it goes into a tray, and then I can transplant, which is a safer way to go because at least then you give it kind of a head start.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great.
Oh, what's that? Cucumbers.
Cucumbers. Oh yeah, and I see Tootie's holding to the screen. She has them in like toilet paper.
Oh.
That's cool.
That's
Very
Yeah, the toilet paper could also be holding too much moisture and making the soil a little too cold. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Depending on how it's cut. Yeah.
Good to know. Let's see. Everybody's typing, I think.
I have a question, Susan. Yeah. How are you? Thank you. I muted in. I didn't take a shower yet, so that's why there's no video, but really appreciate it.
understandable.
From Harborfield's library, and we have a seed library, and people really seem to enjoy getting the variety of seeds from High Mowing and Seed Savers. But I planted a bunch of them, and I was a little too anxious. So they're getting a little too long, the seeds, and a little too spindly. Is there anything I could do at this time to, so they don't die before I have a chance to put them in when it gets warmer?
What type of plants are they from? And I'm sorry, what seed library are you from?
Harborfield's library.
Okay.
That's in Green Lawn, Huntington.
Okay.
Well, so there are some flowers, sweet peas, and then I have basil and tomatoes.
Okay, so tomatoes could be repotted deeper, but the rest of the stuff, if it's too long and leggy, it's probably being grown indoors and there's not enough light. So something will get really, really long and leggy like this. Again, these are tomatoes that were mass sown and they're really long and leggy. I could plant them deeper like this, almost up to the leaf, but that's not typical of like you can't cut up basil to make it deeper. If it's long and leggy, what I would recommend is probably cutting it back to the first leaf and then putting a light as close as you can to that particular plant. I mean, that's the problem when you start it too early, is that they just get too leggy too fast. So,
right. It's definitely too anxious. And I'm getting some flies also. Is there something I could do about that? Those little bites?
You really need to have good air circulation as well. It can't, I mean, part of it is what kind of soil are you using? Is it too wet? Are you using soil that's fairly sterile? Are you taking it out of your backyard? I mean, these are a lot of questions of.
Right. Yes, some of them were seed starting soil, but some of them were just the potting soil.
Right. The potting soil from a bag or?
Yeah, from a bag.
Yeah. Some of it could just be too heavy. Like I said, a lot of it depends. I start with ProMix DX biofungicide for starting our seeds. And then I'll use something else like Vermont compost for, putting it in a final, potting, like cell tray. But initially when you start, you want to start and make sure that soil is really, really light.
Okay.
Like a lot of perlite, like a very light kind of a soil like that.
Okay. I think that's definitely true. I see some mushrooms are growing in the soil, so it's too heavy.
Yeah, definitely. It's too heavy and too wet.
All right. Thank you.
Steph, what may I ask, what are those white things in the seed starting
I always wondered
soil
that too.
or potting
So this is
soil?
so this is perlite. There's two different mixes that you could add. You could get regular potting soil and add vermiculite, which adds water to it. It looks different. But perlite is very light. It doesn't take on water, and it makes the soil drier. And this is a mix that's already, you can get it at like an Agway or a gardening center. I usually, like I said, I usually use ProMix because they're very light soil to use initially. Once it dries out, it's really hard to get it wet again. But if you just keep it at a constant moisture, it's like a really nice mix of peat, perlite, and a wetting agent that just keeps it at a kind of even, light temperature and density for the seed to come up. So it's not too heavy. It's not too light.
So yeah, I did use seed starting soil. I bought a bag of it,
Right.
and it worked. Oh, okay. So those white things are
This is perlite.
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 Perlite. I didn't know that's what they were called. I never knew that.
Yeah, Perlite, perlite.
Thank you.
We have another from Tootie in the chat. She says, I also have basil in cells. Will they survive being transplanted to a bigger pot?
Are you going to keep it in a pot as the final place it's going to be, or are you going to be successively potting this up?
Yes, she says she's going to keep it in a pot, not outside, in other words. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, no. Is she going to be growing basil in a pot outside?
Yes, she says.
Yeah. So I would go from just that initial like 128. If you have a small amount of basil seeds, you could definitely pot it up. But again, it can't be. It's not like a tomato that you can stick it deeper into the soil. Like, it's called healing in with tomato plants, or you could put it in much deeper than it is, because tomatoes have these small root hairs along the stem that'll actually turn into like kind of vestigial roots. But with basil, that's not the case. You have to kind of plant it at the soil line that it's at. But you can pot it up, because that's what we do. We don't direct sow it. We pot it up into a tray and then put it into the ground.
Great. So I know you mentioned that the heating mats, is it good to use like growing lights too? I know I've read that in a couple places, and then I know like my dad grows a lot of stuff. He just uses like the sun through the window, I guess. Is there like a standard way that's like best, or it depends?
I think, you know what, I think probably, I've seen a lot of things where people are using like kind of red, different UV types of lights. When I first started out about, growing stuff in my house about 20 years ago, I just used those T5 lights, shop lights, and I would bring it really close to the tray, like the light, like this would be the light here, and then the plant would be right here. And as the plants grew, I would separate it more. But what they want is they want a lot of light close down to the plant. The further away the light is, the more leggy they're going to get. They are requiring that sun in order to grow.
That makes sense. Ooh, we have someone else typing, I think. Let's see. Okay, yeah, Tootie says I've used heating pads for my back with good success. Yeah, it's good for that too.
Yeah, so you could just kind of set the heating pad onto a certain temperature, and it, like I said, anything that's warm or stays relatively warm and not blazing hot, that's going to make things germinate the quickest. Is like warm bottom. It's called bottom heat, so that's what you kind of want to use.
Interesting. So another question I had, where is it? I wrote it down so I would remember it. Oh yeah, I guess as far as like watering. Oh, and we have somebody else actually here. So I'm not sure if this is from Julia, maybe. I also have a question about the way plants lean toward the light. I keep turning them around so they grow straighter. What is the word for that? And is it okay to turn them?
I'm assuming you're growing them on the windowsill.
Yeah, they don't say. Whoever sent that, are you growing them on a windowsill? Yes. Yes.
Right, because the reason, I mean, I would put it in the brightest area that you possibly have. The reason why they're leaning and they're so leggy, again, is because they're not getting enough light. What you could also do is you could put your seedlings outside and kind of put a covering over them. You can, I'm trying to think, like, I've done things where you could make sides out of wood and put plastic over the top, and that's like it's called a cold frame, and that will also start your plants. It kind of depends, you know, what you want to start inside and what you want to start outside. You know, when you want your season to begin.
Mr. Pest.
Oh, and we have another question here in the chat. Should turnips be directly sown in the garden?
Yeah, all root crops should be directly sown, all of them.
And Julia says, thank you. Great. And as far as like watering like seeds when you're starting seeds, is just like watering a normal house plant? Like you check for when the soil is damp or dry? Or is there any,
Yeah,
depends on the plant?
I would say once a week. And typically, I mean, we have misters, which would make the soil like this, but you could get a tray underneath it, like any
Oh,
plastic tray. And what you could do instead is called bottom watering. You put water in the bottom of the tray, and then you put that works a lot better because you keep your plants really dry, and you keep the soil wet. So a lot of these problems with damping off is because the soil is too wet or it's too cold, and then you have problems with the plants. All of these plants are really dry. So when you water it from the bottom, it has a tendency to do a better job of like reducing mortality of the plant.
interesting. We have another question from the chat from Susan Matthews. She says, what is the best vegetable seed to grow from seed for beginners? And what can be started now?
I would say you could still start tomato plants. You could still start peppers. They just have to be kind of early maturing, like a cherry tomato or not a hot pepper, but a kind of a sweet pepper. You could start pretty much anything from seed. You could start beans from seed, cucumbers from seed, herbs from seed. You know, like I said, we pretty much grow everything from seed except for root crops, which we direct sow. So, like I said, it's good to kind of start it from seed because then you kind of give it a head start. And like I said, peas, even though they were supposed to be direct sown on March 15th, you could still put them in these small individual cells or something like an egg carton, and then just pluck them out and plant them in there. And it's not too late for that.
Thank you.
You can see
You know, like
things.
we're growing, like we start every week, we start new things of Swiss chard, we start new things of cilantro. Like you have to kind of think of cool weather crops that you want to harvest quickly. We also do fava beans. So we have, you know, these are fava beans that we start from
Wow.
seed, tree. And then
Wow.
for favas are a cool weather crop. A lot of people grow them in spring, but they're really better in the fall. And all you have to do is, like, it starts up really quick, warm in a cell tray, just pop it into the ground. You're done. So I'm a big fan of like transplant properly.
Wow.
I guess you have to like favas though.
I think we have somebody typing. Yes. We have our okras also to be sown directly into the garden.
Okra?
Okra, yes.
Yeah, so we always put okra in, again, we transplant it. It transplants really, really well, and it benefits because it's a hot season crop. It benefits from sowing it now and then transplanting it later. So we have a diverse, actually I have here that we're doing today, this is our okra mix, it's Long Island okra mix. And so this is something, because the ground is going to take much longer to warm up than actually a cell tray right now. So it's just easier to stick this in a cell tray and then pot it up later or put it directly into the ground. So that's another thing. Really, really simple to do.
Great. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So things like warm season crops like tomatoes, eggplant, pepper, okra, you know, those are things that are, or tomatillos, those are things that are really going to benefit from starting them early so they fruit on time and you have enough time. But there's other things like cool season crops, like I said, chard, spinach, cilantro, beans, lettuce, any of those things could be started from seed now and then just transplant it into your garden. Now is the perfect time to start things inside and then putting them directly into your garden. Anything pretty much except for root crops.
Is there anything you recommend for like people like myself who live in an apartment and don't have like a yard? Are there things you can grow like just to keep in a pot? Like herbs I think of and things like that?
Totally. I mean, there's a lot of determinate, they're called determinate tomatoes that will only get like a foot high. And if you have access to space outside, like even if it's a deck or a fire escape, you could always put something in a pot, it'll do great. Herbs are the same thing. And you can keep them cut, back. You could get like a gallon pot, like something like this, and you could just keep cutting it back. Basil is like a perfect example of something that you could just, it's ridiculously simple to do. And everybody, you know, just in order to have something fresh and immediate, it's just good to have there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to know for me.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, even microgreens, there's something when we have a lot of seed that we start or that we save and the germination starts to go down, and I'll take like let's say this is like very low germination, I'll just take this whole thing and sow it into a flat, and then I'll get microgreens of the baby cilantro. So, and then you just keep cutting it back and you know, it's kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah. I think we have somebody typing. Okay, yes. So we have, can marigolds be planted in between plants?
Depending on the size, yes. The thing is, planting marigolds in your garden, you want to make sure your plants are not too tightly spaced because they do need airflow between them. I know there's a thing like square foot gardening. but I've also seen that backfire where somebody will put a tomato plant like one every square foot, which is insane. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be putting marigolds, you want to make sure they're small marigolds, not African marigolds like Cracker Jack, which get to be like 3 feet high. But yes, definitely interplanting flowers and beneficial companion plants is a benefit to adding things to your garden.
Great. She says thank you. I think we have, okay, we have something from Susan again. How do you keep squirrels and rabbits out of the garden?
That's a good question. I think every farmer asks that same question, which is why it can be very frustrating growing things, but I don't, different people use different methods. Some people will like put a fence around it or tomato skewers, you know, not to like kill anything, but just because it's uncomfortable for them to walk on. And I think there's really no surefire answer, you know, because it's just a kind of a gamble. You know, they're one of the things that you fight when you're gardening is, you know, Mother Nature and other people who are competing for those plants.
Okay, we have another one from Tootie. She says, when can I put cucumbers in the ground? In June?
I would say like end of May. Like I said, I mean, everybody's usually in a real rush to get things in the ground. If you warm up your soil or you're growing it in a pot, that obviously starts it earlier, but if you're actually wanting to put it in the ground, the soil temperature, usually you could buy a soil thermometer for cheap, like maybe between $5 and $10, and it will tell you the soil temperature. And it's a lot colder than you think it is. So, like I said, you have to kind of monitor that, but usually we're not growing anything like a warm season crop like that until like mid to late May, if we're doing it in bare ground. Without like plastic mulch.
Mm-hmm. Right. Somebody else typing. She says, what about watermelon?
Same thing. Watermelons are great transplanted, but they really need a warm soil temperature in order to go into the ground. I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest, that's one of the biggest reasons that seeds fail or that your plants will fail is that it's not going in at the right time. And they're just not resilient enough to deal with that particular adversity, which is like one of the 3 major things: water, soil, and temperature. So.
It sounded like somebody was talking. No?
You know, cucumbers are good for pots too, as long as you could trellis them on something. If you're on if you have a deck and you put a cucumber in a pot, a cucumber seed or 2 cucumbers, and you kind of travel up like a fence post, that's kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of different like tricks and things you can do to grow the maximum amount in a small space.
Yeah, yeah. That's very cool. I think we have someone else typing as well. We have from Susan, any tips with weeding? Do you have any tips about weeding?
I think if you want to reduce your weeding, I think it's good to mulch. Some people will use newspaper and then like a straw on top of that. But you know, if you keep it weeded and your weed seeds are not going to seed, then you're going to reduce your weed bank. But if you're consistently getting weed seeds that are sprouting, then you're either getting it from somewhere nearby, or you're just weeding too late.
Mm. And from Tootie, she says, I also have a lot of Korean sweet potato slips. When would be a good time to plant those? Plant them.
So the slips, okay, so that's kind of a different, it's not technically a seed, but it's just, slip is, it looks like a branch, and it will have a little piece of root that's tied to that. It's actually, sweet potato slips are cloned off of another plant. So that I would really, really wait until it's warm, because those will die if it's too cold. And those we typically don't put in the ground until like mid-June for us. So that's one of those things. You can kind of hold on to this potato slip and it will still keep creating roots if it's rooted, and there's no problem with waiting. But there will be a problem if you put it in too early.
I've never heard of that before. Says thank you.
Sweet potato slips are very cool.
Is it part of the sweet potato plant itself?
Yeah, so there's a sweet potato is not actually a potato. It's part of the morning glory family. So you get a sweet potato and it will create these like very long vines. And the vines will create roots. If you cut those vines off, if you get it from a certified sweet potato supplier and not from the grocery store, which could have viruses attached to it, because it is living tissue, then it's just what we do is like our sweet potato slip looks like this. It's like literally a stick with like one leaf off of it. And then we put that into the ground with the root, and that's it. It'll grow from that. But that is a tropical plant, so it really does require a very warm soil.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay, Susan says, I really appreciate your info. I have to leave the meeting. Thank you. Thank you for coming, Susan. Okay. I have, Tootie has her, oh wow, look at that. So she has the sweet potato, I guess I'm assuming that is on there. Oh wow, that's very cool. Oh, wow, look at that. That's very neat. Wow. Oh, Julia's back. Hi, Julia.
Hi, I'm back. Well, I was really here the whole time.
I know.
I'm showing you milkweed seeds. I just remembered that I had these. My sister sent these to me from Iowa a while ago. Do you think they're still viable, or?
My best advice is plant them and see, because viability depends on a lot of different things, how they're kept, when they were harvested. I would say plant it. There's nothing to lose, you know.
Right. About when and how deep?
Well, those seeds are actually, they look like kind of dandelions, so I would just kind of put them on the surface, and I would not really cover them at all, but I'd make sure I had a wet surface, and just, if anything, like a very fine layer of soil on top. That's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
Let me know how it turns out.
And Rosa, thank you.
Yes, of course. Is that really the best way to, if you have seeds, you're not sure how old they are, is just to plant them and see what happens? Yeah, makes sense. Great. Nicole says, thank you for all of the great information. Yes, this was really great. So, because we're about to hit 3 o'clock, if anybody has some like final questions or anything, go for it. Judy says thank you as well.
So, I mean, in this thing, I just wanted to let you know, we have these local varieties. Some of it's, they're early tomato varieties. So some of them are Chalk's Early Jewel, Bolgiano's Extra Early, that we will be potting up and bequeathing to you. And we could talk about that later,
Great.
but
Yes,
so they're on the launching pad.
that would be wonderful. Very cool to see them now
Yeah.
too.
Wow, it started out as just a small little tiny seed.
Yeah. I think we have someone else typing this one. Trudy is asking, where can we buy determinate tomato seedlings?
You could get, there's a lot of different seeds for open source ones. Are you a member of the Brentwood Library?
Yes, she is. Yes.
Okay, then I think I gave, and if I didn't, there should be one, that's 2 small ones that I could make sure that the library has, and you could still start. So they're really simple to start now.
Nice.
So.
Oh, and Julia just says, she says, thank you. When should I plant the milkweed seeds?
Those you can start now.
Okay, you can start them now. Oops. Yes, thank you. Great. Oh, she says great, thank you. Okay. Yes, and I know, Tootie, unfortunately, we can't get the seeds from the library right now, but hopefully sometime soon. That's what we're hoping. I know we had just started it before all this happened, but there's not much we can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a pressing like need that people within the seed library, you could just kind of get all the names together, and I'll mail the seeds out.
Oh, okay.
You know, as long as it's not like a deluge, but I could mail them out within a week of what people are looking for.
Okay, that would be cool. We're still obviously figuring out how everything is working since this is a big change for everybody. So
Yeah.
but that would definitely would be cool to do.
Yeah, I mean, if there's some way to like distribute the seeds with the library, like either put it in kind of a location, and then people who are signed up can get them. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but that would seem to make the most sense.
Yeah, that's something we could definitely think about, maybe having something like that, depending on what we're allowed to do. Yeah, that would be very cool. Ooh.
Yeah, so I mean, just let me know. Like I said, we have a lot of the seeds. I would like to get them out to your seed library patrons. We can kind of brainstorm about how to do that, because I think it would just be good to make that happen and then the plants to be distributed. However, like I said, whatever would be the simplest way to do that.
Great. Oh, Judy says thank you as well thank you for all your information. All right, so we're hitting about 3 o'clock now. So I guess we could start wrapping it up. If anybody has any final questions, you can go ahead. If not, we can close out here.
Well, I would like to thank you guys for having me and allowing me to answer your questions about seed starting.
Is there a place where we can find more about what you do or anything? Do you have a website that people can go
It's,
to?
yeah, lirsc.org, and I will be putting some information up there about just an easy way to start seeds that have links to other people who have already created documents. So it's pretty simple, and what would be great is if you could put something up there about how they can access the seeds through their library, even if the library is not open. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's like if there's a way to get the first 50 people who sign up to, we could get the seeds out to them. You know, every seed library is different, but it would just be good to get those people those seeds for the season.
Yeah, that would be, we can think about that because that would be very cool to do. And we definitely had a response after we had our launch. We had, a couple of people that came to the launch and took out seeds after that, which was very exciting. Great. All right. So if no one has any more questions, we can finish up. Just give the chat a second. All right. I guess we can finish up then. But Steph, thank you so much for answering everybody's questions. This was really knowledgeable. Learned a lot. I learned a lot from this. I don't know a lot, so I learned a lot.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Wonderful.
All righty.
Hey, everybody. Stay safe. And thank you again, Steph.
Thank you.